There is an ancient, profound and transformative truth that is often forgotten or left aside. A truth that many prefer to ignore, but that is much closer to you than it seems. This truth is that your thoughts have the power to shape the reality around you. This is not just a philosophical idea or a modern theory. It is something deeply spiritual, revealed millennia ago and present in the Holy Scriptures. In the Bible, we find several passages that speak about the impact of our thoughts. One example is Proverbs 23 verse 7, which says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." This passage teaches us that what we think defines who we are. Our thoughts determine our worldview and over time begin to shape our reality, like a seed that, when planted, gives rise to a tree full of fruit. It all starts in the mind. But this truth goes beyond what we imagine. In Philippians 4 verse 8, we are instructed to meditate on everything that is good, pure, noble and true. This is not just positive advice. It is a spiritual key to aligning our thoughts with the best, with what brings us closer to God. When we focus on higher thoughts, our emotions also transform. And what we feel directly impacts our experience of life. If our thoughts are dark, full of doubt and fear, our feelings tend to reflect this with anxiety and discouragement. But if we cultivate thoughts of faith, hope and gratitude, we experience an inner peace that surpasses human understanding. This internal transformation, which begins in the mind and extends to the feelings, can change everything around us. And it is at this point that we ask ourselves, how can this internal change influence our daily actions and decisions? The transformative power of thought is not limited to what we feel, but also to the way we live our lives. In the Bible, we see repeatedly that our thoughts are more than simple reflections. They have the power to shape our identity and, consequently, the world around us. In Proverbs 23 verse 7 we read, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." This verse clearly shows us that what dwells in our minds defines who we become. Our thoughts are seeds that, when nurtured, grow and bear fruit, influencing both our perception of ourselves and the circumstances we attract into our lives. This truth is something that many avoid discussing. Society often teaches us to look outside for answers, but the Bible reminds us that the real power lies within us, in our thoughts and beliefs. What do you think about yourself? What do you believe about the world around you? These are the questions that determine your experience of life. In Romans 12 verse 2, Paul exhorts us, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This implies that the power to transform our lives begins with the way we think. Modern science, through studies on neuroplasticity and psychology, is beginning to recognize this spiritual reality. What we repeatedly think literally alters our brain and, consequently, our behavior in life. But this wisdom is nothing new. The Bible, with its profound revelations, has taught us for millennia that thought is a powerful force. Jesus, in several passages, invited us to trust in the power of faith, which begins in our mind and heart. In Mark 11 verse 24 he says, "Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Faith, which is a thought strengthened by certainty, has the power to move mountains. When we align our thoughts with God's will, we begin to notice changes not only within ourselves, but also in the situations around us. When we allow negative thoughts to dominate our minds, we are inevitably swept away by a tide of feelings that overwhelm us. Anxiety, discouragement, and fear are the fruits of these thoughts of doubt and insecurity. On the other hand, when we direct our minds toward what is elevated, as Philippians 4 verse 8 teaches us, we experience an emotional transformation. We begin to feel peace, joy, and hope, because our thoughts are aligned with what is good and true. God, in His wisdom, gives us the freedom to choose what will occupy our minds, and this choice is essential for our emotional and spiritual health. In Isaiah 26 verse 3, we find a powerful promise. "You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is stayed because he trusts in you." In other words, when our thoughts are focused on God, we find a peace that exceeds the circumstances around us. No matter the chaos that the world may bring, our mind, centered on divine truths, remains calm and secure. It is important to remember that this battle for our thoughts is constant. This is not something we do once and that's it. Every day we are bombarded by influences that try to divert our minds from what is good and true. Therefore, the renewal of the mind, as Paul exhorts us in Romans 12 verse 2, is an ongoing process. We need to be vigilant, consciously choosing where we will focus our thoughts and in this way, protect our feelings and our spiritual well-being. When we are able to do this, not only do we experience peace and emotional balance, but this inner transformation begins to influence our actions. And this is exactly what leads us to the next step: how our feelings shaped by our thoughts can direct our attitudes and choices in life. When our thoughts and feelings are guided by fear, doubt, and insecurity, our actions reflect these emotions in an evident way. We become paralyzed in the face of opportunities, we procrastinate, and often we sabotage ourselves, creating obstacles where there shouldn't be any. It's as if we put invisible barriers in our own path. However, when we renew our minds and allow thoughts of faith and trust to take center stage in our lives, everything changes. Hesitation is replaced by boldness, and actions that once seemed impossible are now approached with courage and determination. This renewal of the mind is an ongoing process. Romans 12 verse 2 reminds us of the importance of not conforming to the standards of this world, which often lead us to despair and mediocrity. Instead, we are called to transform ourselves, to renew our thinking so that our actions reflect God's greater purpose for us. When this happens, our actions are no longer guided by fear but are instead driven by faith. This means that even in the face of challenges, we act with confidence, certain that God is guiding us. This alignment of thought, feeling, and action is what allows us to live according to God's will. As James 2 verse 17 says, "So also faith, if it does not have works, is dead in itself." True faith is manifested in our actions. If we believe in God's promises, our lives should reflect this in every decision we make, in every step we take. It is not enough to simply think or feel correctly, we must act in accordance with those thoughts and feelings. This powerful and transformative truth, which is often silenced, is what can free you from the limitations you have imposed on yourself. The power to change your life and create a new reality is in your hands, or rather, in your mind. God has given us the ability to shape the world around us, starting with the transformation of our thoughts. When we understand this, we understand that we are not mere passive spectators, but active participants in the construction of our destiny. The renewal of the mind is the starting point for this transformation. When we are aware of what we think and decide to align our ideas with divine truth, something profound begins to happen within us. Thoughts of doubt and fear give way to faith and trust. This is what we see in 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5, where Paul exhorts us to take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. This means that we have the responsibility to filter what enters our mind, choosing what edifies and discarding what separates us from God. When you renew your thoughts with the Word of God, the impact is inevitable. Your heart is also transformed. Your emotions, previously dominated by anxiety, turn to peace and hope. This new inner state in turn guides your actions, leading you to make more assertive decisions, act more confidently, and live a life more aligned with God's purpose. This truth, which many try to suppress, is liberating. When we apply this principle, we realize that change begins within us and is reflected in the world around us. And the most incredible thing is that this transformation does not end with you. It impacts everyone around you and creates a cycle of renewal and hope. So, how can we ensure that this internal change is constant and genuine?